There is a moment that keeps happening in certain households. A parent pulls out something their child used to love. The drawing pencils, the football, the Lego set that sat in a box for a year, and sets it down in front of them. And the child looks at it and then looks back at the screen, and the parent stands there watching that happen, and something very quiet moves through them. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, something closer to, I don't know how to reach them anymore. If you've had that moment, or a version of it, this video is going to tell you something that changes what you do next. Not because the right activity was hiding somewhere you haven't looked, but because the problem you've been trying to solve is not the problem that's actually there. Here's what this video is actually about. Why offline activities feel flat to a screen-saturated child right now. The specific mechanism behind that flatness, and what the sequence looks like before any activity has a real chance of taking hold. That sequence is what's been missing. Not the activity, the sequence. Before we get to the mechanism, something else needs to be named. Because this video arrived in your feed as a question about hobbies. But the thing you're actually carrying is older than that. You remember who your child used to be, the one who would spend an afternoon building something out of nothing. Who had opinions about things, specific, surprising opinions that had nothing to do with a video they'd just watched. Who got genuinely absorbed in the world before the world had to be delivered to them through a screen. You remember that child? And somewhere in the last few years, between one thing and another, that version of them started becoming harder to find. It didn't happen in a single moment. It happened the way all distance happens, quietly, in increments too small to name at the time. The afternoon, they chose the device over the back garden. The weekend, the sketchbook stopped coming out. The evening, you suggested something and they looked at you like you'd asked them to perform a task. And now you're here, watching this video, and underneath the question about hobbies is a grief that most people in your life don't know you're carrying. The grief of watching a child's curiosity migrate somewhere you cannot fully follow. That grief is real. It deserves to be named before anything else. Because if it isn't named, it leaks into every attempt you make. It makes the sketchbook feel like a test, the football feel like a plea, the Lego set feel like evidence. And children feel all of that. They feel when an activity is really a hope you're holding, that they can feel the weight of but don't know how to carry. So before the framework, before the sequence, before anything practical, what you're carrying is not a parenting failure. It's a specific kind of grief. And that specific kind of grief has a real path through it. That's what this video is actually building toward. Now let's talk about what's actually happening when your child looks at that sketchbook and feels nothing. And you already know pieces of this: the dopamine research, the reward pathway, the design intention behind every platform. You know this part. What this video is going to give you is the specific implication of that research for the moment you set the sketchbook down and your child looks at it and feels nothing. The developing brain's reward system is adaptive. It calibrates its baseline to the inputs it receives most consistently. When a child spends hours per day inside environments designed by engineers whose entire job is to make the next thing more compelling than the last, the reward system doesn't stay neutral. It adjusts. What it adjusts to is a stimulus level that ordinary offline experience cannot immediately match. Not because offline experience is less valuable, because it operates at a completely different frequency. The flatness your child shows when they look at the sketchbook, the half-hearted attempt that lasts 8 minutes before they drift, is not a character trait. It is not evidence that they have lost the capacity for offline engagement. It is a calibration state. And here is the thing about calibration states. They respond to sequences, not to activities. Every time you've placed an activity in front of your child, the football, the art supplies, the instrument, the board game, and watched it fail to ignite anything, you were doing the right thing at the wrong moment in the sequence. The activity wasn't wrong. The conditions weren't ready for the activity yet. This is what no article about 30 activities your child will love ever tells you. Because it's not a curation problem. It's a sequencing problem. And that distinction changes everything about what you do next. Research on adolescent reward systems consistently shows that the brain's tolerance for lower stimulus engagement can be rebuilt, but it requires a gradient, not a jump. You cannot move a child from 6 hours of algorithmically optimized content to a blank page and expect the blank page to compete. Not immediately, not without a sequence in between. That sequence has 3 phases. And the activities, the ones that will actually take hold, live inside phase 3, not before it. Phase 1 is decompression. not elimination. Decompression. Before any alternative can take root, the stimulus baseline has to come down. Not dramatically, not through a cold turkey confrontation that turns the household into a conflict zone. Incrementally, this looks like more unstructured time without an immediate replacement offered. It looks like not filling every gap with an activity. It looks like letting boredom arrive, not punishing it, not fixing it, but letting it sit in the room long enough to become uncomfortable. Boredom in a screen-saturated child is not a problem to solve. It is the beginning of the recalibration. It is the brain starting to look for its own signal because the external one has been reduced. Most parents rush past phase 1 because watching a bored child is uncomfortable, because the silence feels like failure, because something in us wants to fix what we see. The discomfort of phase 1 is not a sign that it isn't working. It is the sign that it is. Phase 2 is low-stakes exposure. This is where the activities reappear. But not as invitations, not as suggestions, as presence. The sketchbook is on the table, not offered, just there. The football is in the garden, not suggested, just visible. The instrument is out of its case, not because anyone is practicing, but because it's part of the environment again. Children at this stage are not ready to engage with an activity on demand, but they will notice what is present in their environment. And noticing is the beginning of interest, even when it doesn't look like anything yet. Phase 2 requires patience that runs against everything our culture tells us about efficiency and results. It requires putting something down without knowing when or whether it will be picked up. That is not passivity. That is the correct move at this moment in the sequence. Phase 3 is co-engagement before independent engagement. This is where the attachment research intersects with the hobby question. And this is the phase that most parenting content skips entirely. The pattern that keeps appearing in developmental research is this. Children do not engage independently with new things before they have first engaged with them alongside a trusted adult. The activity is not the bridge back to your child. You are the bridge. What this means in practice: you pick up the pencils. You're not teaching. You're not facilitating. You're just drawing, badly, slowly, without agenda, near your child. You kick the ball against the wall, not at them, not inviting them, just doing it, in proximity with the particular quality of attention that has no performance in it. You are not engineering enthusiasm. You are modeling what it looks like to be a person who finds the offline world interesting. And children, even teenagers who seem entirely unreachable, are watching that more closely than they appear to be. The child who used to be curious about the world is not gone. They are on the other side of a sequence that now has a shape. This is not a comfort. This is a direction. If you want the activity layer of this framework, the specific offline activity selected to match the stimulus profile of a screen-saturated child, not a screen-naive one, there's a guide in the description built around exactly that. And for parents who want to go one layer deeper, past the activities, into the question of who your child is becoming in the digital age, that's also in the description. Both are there whenever you're ready. Here is what realistic looks like. In the first few days of phase 1, resistance will increase before it decreases. A child whose stimulus baseline has been high will experience reduced screen time, not as relief, but as deprivation. And they will communicate that in whatever register they have available to them. That increase in resistance is not a sign that the sequence is failing. It is a sign that the calibration is beginning. The parent's job in phase 1 is to stay, not to fix the boredom, not to offer alternatives before the boredom has time to work. Just to stay present, calm, not punitive, while the recalibration begins. This is harder than it sounds, because staying requires the parent to tolerate their own discomfort alongside their child's. And here is the thing no one says directly about that. Your own discomfort in phase 1 is part of what makes it work, because when your child looks at you and finds you steady, not solving, not rescuing, not capitulating, something registers. Something that doesn't look like anything in the moment, but is, in fact, the beginning of trust being rebuilt. In phase 2, expect the activities to be ignored at first. Leave them out anyway. This is not failure, this is correct. The sketchbook that sits untouched for 5 days and is then opened briefly on day 6, that is the sequence working. In phase 3, the co-engagement phase, expect awkwardness. Expect your child to be suspicious of your sudden interest in drawing. Expect them to say something dismissive. Stay anyway. The suspicion is evidence of attention, And attention, even skeptical attention, is the precondition for connection. One thing for the next 48 hours. Not the whole framework, one thing. Find an object that belongs to something your child used to love, something from before, something with history in it, and put it somewhere visible, not as a suggestion. Just as presence. Don't mention it, don't ask about it, just let it be there. That's phase 2 beginning. That's the sequence starting. One thing, not everything. The sequence this video gave you tells you how. The guide in the description, link below, and in the pinned comment gives you the what, the specific activities that belong inside it, selected for exactly where your child is right now. It's there whenever you're ready. What was the last thing your child was genuinely interested in before screens moved in? And when did you notice it start to fade? You came to this video with a question about hobbies. What you're leaving with is something more useful than a list of activities. You're leaving with the correct diagnosis. The flatness your child shows when you place something offline in front of them is not who they are. It is not a verdict on what the screens have done to them permanently. It is a calibration state, and calibration states respond to sequences. Every attempt you made before this, every activity that lasted a week, every interest that briefly flickered and went out, those weren't failures of the activity or failures of your child. They were the right instinct at the wrong moment in a sequence you didn't yet have. You have it now. In 20 years, your child will not remember which activities you offered or which ones failed. They will remember whether you stayed, whether you were present in the room when boredom arrived and didn't flee it, whether you picked up the pencil alongside them, without agenda, without performance, and showed them what it looks like to find the offline world worth being in. That is what the sequence is actually building, not a hobby. A child who knows how to be present in their own life. The child who used to be curious about the world. The one who would spend an afternoon building something out of nothing. Who had opinions, who got absorbed. Who found the world interesting before it had to be handed to them. That child is not gone. They are on the other side of a sequence that now has a shape, and you are already in it. Keep going.